Today we're asked to wage a new campaign against a new kind of enemy. The battlefield is very different, and the weapons are different. So the strategies that we employ have to be different too in order to overcome that enemy. I am confident that based on the choices we are making, we will degrade and ultimately defeat Daesh.
Let's ask some questions and get under the surface of this latest threat. Our guest is president of the Muslim Public Affairs Council, who is in his own right a controversial figure. He was in attendance during President Obama's recent summit on violent extremism, and he's been quoted as saying, "We Muslims in Muslim communities now have the responsibility to set the record straight." Welcome Salam Al-Marayati to MidPoint. Salam, I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Let me first get to the actual summit itself. Did you hear what you thought you would hear? Were you shocked? Were you disappointed in anything the president did or did not say? Because most Americans were not happy. Neither was the rest of the world.
Well, we didn't have really an understanding of where the summit was going to be in terms of expectations. But here's where we're coming from. And we have to separate the politics from the policy. Our expectation is really our responsibility is how do we bring more Muslims who can be involved in countering the ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram ideologies? How do we get them to feel empowered so that we can help in countering violent extremism, counterterrorism, countering ISIS, in the battle of ideas, to expose their moral bankruptcy, to show that we can take away their legitimacy and bring it back to the mainstream Muslim communities. If we can do that, then I think we can make progress in being more effective in countering them as in a united front as Americans.
Okay, then let's get to it then, Salam. How then do you do that? Where do we start?
So, for example, we have what's called the Safe Spaces Initiative. And the Safe Spaces Initiative that we are promoting is about prevention, rehabilitation, and then ejection from the mosque in partnership with law enforcement. In the case of Tamerlan Tsarnaev, when he stood up and started shouting in the mosque, he was kicked out. But had we intervened, we could have prevented the Boston Marathon attack from happening.
So what you're saying then is inside the mosque itself, that the clerics there, the people there are the ones who need to basically call out when they know or when they think that someone there is a problem. You're asking them to basically, some would say, turn on their own kind.
No, that's not. First of all, that's not what I'm saying, because that's already being done.
Okay.
They are calling, for example, in Irvine, somebody was talking about violent extremism in the mosque. They called the authorities. It turned out that the person was an FBI informant. So it shows that people are already calling to turning people in who are engaged in criminal activity. What I'm saying is to even start from before a person goes down that ramp of violent extremism, to intervene, to create an environment where we can engage people. And most importantly, for your question, to amplify the voice of the moderates against the extremists.
Then about a minute or so left before we take a break. We'll come back, we'll talk some more. But why is that not being done now in large quantities at many mosques around the country?
Well, I think number one, the voice is not being amplified because we only get a few opportunities to talk. For example, I appreciate the opportunity to talk on this show because, rarely do you have Muslims on network television or any kind of mass media, except Al-Qaeda. It's only when Al-Qaeda or ISIS or Boko Haram do something, that's when the news comes. So it's a struggle, it's an uphill battle to get our voices heard, to counter that. Our voices are there, they're just not being heard.
Well, getting your voices out are one thing, but is this happening in a lot of mosques around the country? And if not, how do you get them to basically do that? You say that it is.
Yes. No, I've attended, believe you me, I've attended hundreds of conferences, sermons, rejecting. I mean, there was a group of scholars that issued a fatwa in America against ISIS. And again, it's it's people that are trying to get the message out. It makes maybe the back page of the newspaper.
Okay, Salam, I'm going to ask you to hold on one moment here because we're up against a break. We'll come right back and we'll continue this conversation right here on MidPoint, where we question everything. Let's welcome back to MidPoint, President of the Muslim Public Affairs Council from Los Angeles, Salam Al-Marayati. Salam, let's just continue a little bit from where we were in the last segment here, because there are people here in America who will believe that there are factions in mosques all across this country. We have been told by some people in security, we've been told by politicians as well, that many mosques around the country are at this moment fostering potential terrorists. So that is, and again, I know that you're going to disagree with that in many ways, but how does the Muslim population then become convinced to do something, to say something out loud when they are told by many people, don't say anything, you will be hurt? There are those also who out there, and I've spoken to them personally, who are afraid of retribution if they say anything at all.
Well, we've been saying it, and we don't fear retribution. We've been working with mosques and law enforcement, and every law enforcement person I've talked to says that the problem is not in the mosque. The problem is now on laptops, because the way ISIS is recruiting people, it's through social media. So they're going right to the laptops of individuals, and in every case that I've seen, the individuals that are involved in extremism, violent extremism and terrorism, Nida al-Hassan, Tamerlan Tsarnaev, the mosque had nothing to do with it. If anything, they were pushed out of the mosque. That's why you have lone wolves now. Lone wolves means that they're not part of the community, they're on their own, and they're being radicalized on the internet, on their laptop. So what people are thinking, maybe that's the perception we have to deal with, but the reality is when we're looking at these cases, the mosque and the community are part of the solution, and they are the assets for us, so we need to leverage that.
So let's then get to that. Let's go then to the reality as you presented here. And again, what you're saying, I have also heard many people say that it is not in the mosque. It is in the social media. Knowing full well that the governments are involved in social media, trying to attack that, what is it that the Muslim community can do in cyberspace, either by Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, to turn this around and trying to get to these people before they become radicalized?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that is the question that we're all struggling with. How do we get our message out? Because we've tried, for example, we had a group of scholars, and we did a YouTube of them that got over 1 million hits that says that injustice cannot defeat injustice. In other words, don't get lured into the trap of ISIS by thinking that you're working for justice in that way. So it got 1 million hits, but again, we're talking about a drop in the bucket. That's why we have to work in partnership with government, with law enforcement, with Hollywood, to come up with, let's face it, our message is boring. Being a moderate is not sensational and sexy. So when you got ISIS now that's creating Hollywood productions level videos out there that are barbaric, they're horrifying, they're terrifying, but they're done at that level, and we don't have the resources to counter that. That's what we're talking about.
What does that say, though, about the kind of people that are turned, though? Salam, what does it say, then, about the level of intelligence and the kind of people who are turned by basically Hollywood-style videos?
They're losers. Unfortunately, these people, in my opinion, are going down. They're lost souls. We'll try to rehabilitate whomever we can, but this is the reality that we're dealing with right now. But we have to come up with a message that is as, if not more, catchy and as newsworthy as what ISIS is doing, and that's the challenge. And frankly, sir, the U.S. government is having as much of a challenge in dealing with that as our community. So maybe if we partner with each other, maybe we can come up with things that are more effective. But the idea is to get more Muslim community partners involved in this and bring them onto the stage and get their voices amplified.
Okay, got about a minute left here, and let's talk about this threat against shopping malls here. And is it possible in your mind that ISIS does not really seek to blow up malls, but maybe they're trying to instill fear? Because if people are in the malls, if they're in their communities, if they see people wearing Muslim garb, they then turn against them. It's an attack on more prejudice to kind of get America to hate Muslims more than they hate them now?
Well, yeah, another great question. I think there are two parts to this. First of all, yes, ISIS wants to push the narrative that America is at war with Islam. So if they can somehow instigate more prejudice and hate, and just hate speech, it doesn't have to be hate crimes, but just create that image that there's more intolerance towards Muslims in the West, that fulfills their goal and their narrative. But more importantly, what they're trying to do is to get all of us so drained in our resources that we deal with false alarms all the time. And that in itself becomes a national security risk, that when we're just reacting to them and not looking in the right places, it's a waste of our resources, and we're not finding that needle in the haystack, if you will. And so we have to be more shrewd in dealing with the real threats and not just falling into their trap by, they're just trying to horrify us through their social media.
Salam Al-Marayati, we are unfortunately all out of time, but you make some excellent points here. You do appear to be someone who is fighting back against this. We are going to stay in touch. Let's talk again soon. Let's see if we can help push forward the narrative that you and your people are trying to get out there.
Thank you, and we're all Americans. Let me just be very clear. We're doing this as a civic duty for America.
Wonderfully said. Salam Al-Marayati, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, there are those who see the president as seeking to control the internet. We'll turn to that next, right here on MidPoint.